Hello out there, and thanks for joining today's UI5ers Live. As always, I am not alone, but with my colleagues, Stefan Beck.
Hey. Hi.
Peter Muessig.
Hello.
And Andreas Kunz.
Hello.
Yeah, well, what can I say? No guests for today, so no one I have to introduce. But well, this means that we can dive into the topics right away. So guys, what do we want to discuss today?
We want to share some news, so there are some videos live, right?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, those people who did not have the opportunity to see or join us on UI5Con, the recordings are out. I think it's only like 2 or 3 missing, which will be hopefully published this week. But beside of this, you can find all the recordings on the Open UI5 YouTube channel.
That's cool. So, and with that, I think we have not more. So let's dive in maybe directly into the topic. So I have 2 topics for today. One is a recent update we made to Easy-UI5, the 3.5.0 version. Besides the Easy-UI5, there is another thing I want to talk about. It was a question which has been asked also at UI5Con in several places. It's about using third-party libraries in UI5 projects. And when they are used, we already have options to use them then for standalone applications. And recently, the UI5 Tooling Modules made some extensions. So this is a plugin which helps you to consume NPM packages. We see it then later on, and it now is able to also copy third-party modules into the namespace of the individual component. And this has advantages because then you can use it in the Fiori Launchpad as well. So let's get started first with the topic of Easy-UI5. So a while back, I also wrote that blog post with the Easy-UI5 3.5 version, which is now available because we identified several points which could be improved. And this Easy-UI5 3.5 version comes with several new features. One is a thing which also is maybe pretty nice if you are working then on a train or so, or somewhere else, and people like that also because of VS Code, that they can take their stuff with them and then run it. And here also for that, Easy-UI5 now comes with an offline mode. And then all the templates or the generators, the sub-generators you have, then once they are used, they are copied locally, installed locally, and will be used then from the local cache. So for example, if you do that, we just have to add then this offline capabilities. Easy-UI5, and then just writing the offline. And with that, it just lists the entries which are local. It will not call then and ask the UI5 community GitHub organization what's available there. So these are all local, these generators. And then I can use them just right away. Another thing which I noticed also during the usage of the Easy-UI5 is that sometimes the update didn't work, or there was some corrupt generator then being located in the Easy-UI5 local repository. And in order to be able to update that and to fix that issue without going then directly into the nested folders, I added now the option to force the update. So if you call, for example, a generator like the TS app with the option force update, it will not check for whether the generator is up to date or not. It will just download it again and ensures that it's being properly installed locally in your offline storage here. So this takes now a bit because it's cloning the repo and then running the npm install. But while doing so, let's go ahead and go for the next topic. So one important thing, what we added also as a result of the UI5Con is that the Easy-UI5 generator is now able to also consume generators not only from the UI5 community GitHub organization. You know that all generator UI5 prefixed generators from the UI5 community are listed then when you call Easy-UI5. So let's go there. Easy-UI5. And instead that this is just limited to this or to some extensions, you can also add an additional GitHub organizations. That's something with what I had it with Marcel a while back, that you can also pull your generators from your own repository. We said it would be also cool that you have the opportunity to include or to use directly a repository via this special syntax here. So you can pass then the GitHub organization or your user, and then inside, after that with a slash separated, this is the name of the repository. So here we use this because for the tutorial, the TypeScript tutorial of UI5, we wanted to make the generator for the tutorial part of the repository. So if we look there in subsamples where this generator or where this tutorial is located, that's here. This is the project. There is now in the project itself a subfolder generator, and here inside this generator can be consumed with Easy-UI5. You might wonder why it's in the subfolder and it's not displayed here. In the it's not added here as a path because of this is the default. So I want to make sure that this is always included in the repository. And if I call this here, then it now consumes the generator from there. It fetches it from there and also makes a local copy of that. So that if you run it offline, it can also potentially work then offline as well. So it takes also a little bit for the npm install. But while it's doing this, because you don't want to run it now, in order, if you want to have, let's say, another path in your repository, we thought also about a syntax, how you can specify the path and even a branch from where the generator is being used. So this is a pretty mighty syntax then, more or less, that you can put a generator for some special testing cases, tutorials, whatever, or maybe even try something out for yourself, make your own sub-generator and contribute it to the UI5 community, that you can keep it in your GitHub user, like I did do with the example below. And in this repository, and then you specify the path via this exclamation mark slash syntax. It's from the nested jar zip URLs then derive this syntax, and then you can specify the path here. I was also thinking maybe that's also something we can discuss in the repository for Easy-UI5 as well, whether the exclamation mark is good, because if you use it in a command line, you need to escape that. And it's a bit, unfortunate. We can also say it can be omitted, and it would make it a little bit easier to use it. But for example, here in this case, if I want to use my generator then from my repository, which is here in the root. So I have it here, GitHub generator UI5 TS app. That's the one I used also for the keynote of the UI5Con. It has some extensions here inside. In order to use that directly, I can do so by using this URL here. I hope you can see that. And this comes here with some additions what I made for the UI5Con, also regarding the OData service consumption and stuff like that. But this is now going really directly to the root. This was also really essential to make it a little bit easier at the end with Easy-UI5 to play a little bit around with own generators without contributing that, and using already somehow this syntax, sharing it also with some people you want, not to make it available in general. And last but not least, there is another feature which I also want to show. It's the best of UI5 integration, because the ultimate goal of Easy-UI5 should be really that these generators, these sub-generators, are not consumed anymore from the UI5 community. I think we noticed also that this is a bit restrictive. And yeah, you need to somehow contribute your repository then to the UI5 community, which is good because then we have a shared responsibility for that. So it has also advantages. But if you want to keep it and prefer to keep it more or less in your own organization or in your own domain, in your own user, then what you can do is to contribute it to Best of UI5. So I think it was the last time when Marian also at UI5Con showed Best of UI5, and we had it also at the UI5ers Live 1 or 2 times back. I don't know exactly anymore. And here in the Best of UI5, it's possible for you that you can contribute your generators. And the idea is that with the next major version of Easy-UI5, we will make this the default, that the generators are then finally consumed from Best of UI5. So we see here, there are already some generators inside. And if I now run Easy-UI5 with the next option, which is then the preview to the next major version, then it now lists all these generators directly from the Best of UI5 page. And it's still here the UI5 community because they are originally hosted there in this UI5 community, but this will then also be a little bit refactored how this comes around here. But then in future, the place how you can get in and become part of the Easy-UI5 community and make also your generator part of the community is then really by bringing it into the Best of UI5 page. And with that, we can also ensure that things like the names are unique, because in the past we said, yeah, well, we keep something like the generator UI5 as a prefix. But this is also something we can weaken up a little bit more, because with the integration here, we ensure then finally that there are, let's say, unique generators. And this is a little bit the outlook to the Easy-UI5 and the review of that, what has been done so far. So with that, we are now, yeah, I would say in a pretty good shape what it is. If you have also another ideas, what can be done with Easy-UI5, feel free to reach out to me. One thing I would like to mention, because this feature I now show, there was also a contribution from Dimitar Fineski about initializing the GitHub repository for the new project, which has been now also added to one generator. We could also think of making some kind of a shared dependency for all generators for the future, where you can have some utility functions and they can be reused across different generators to establish, let's say, a common ground for all of them. That would be also something, yeah, if you want to join, then yeah, feel free. This would be a really nice thing, how to extend also the ecosystem for the generators here. So, but with that, let's generate a new project. And then if you have no questions, we can go ahead. Are there questions, by the way? Did you see something?
There is one question, actually a quite good one, because Marian says like there are quite some features now in Easy-UI5 and all the handling. And what about actually documentation? So, I mean, only with blog posts, it's quite hard like to follow up on things and to find things. So I guess it's a valid point. But for me, there would be also the question like, where would be the best place to have it, no?
Yeah, I was also thinking about that while writing the blog post, because I would say we have to enhance the README-MD here, because there all this information should go in. And I think that would be also one candidate, which is, yeah, which we can do also together. In best, this would also have the positive side effect for sure, that in Best of UI5, let me go there. For Easy-UI5, you would also see the README-MD then directly below. And if someone is looking for that in our first place where we go when looking in the internet, the Best of UI5 page, that you can find then the information there.
Mm. But don't you think that it would be even necessary to have some chapters and so on? Because like depending on use cases and whatever, so, or like the README could get quite longish at the end, or?
Yeah, that's true. It could get quite longish, but I think more or less, if you look into that, this is the default help from Yeoman. It has everything built in so the commands or the properties are also listed then here inside. And here you find also the options which we have here in Easy-UI5, and they are also documented with a short line. But for sure, yeah, I don't think maybe in chapters. Maybe it's more explaining the individual options, as I think that's more related to that.
Okay. Yeah, if someone from our participants have some thoughts on this,
yeah, feel free.
Would be interesting. What do you think? How to handle this topic? Yeah, and the other thing, what I just realized, I mean, you're always saying like if something is missing, they should reach out to you, but wouldn't it be like better to have like a how it's called, like a request on the GitHub issue or so?
Reach out can be an issue on GitHub for the project. Sometimes, yeah, yeah, we can quickly check that and follow up on that. Sometimes it takes a bit, it depends also for sure. But there it's the chance that not only one is looking into that for sure, and multiple persons are looking into that. So that's for sure the better option. I think we didn't actively use the discussion forum so far. That maybe also something we can use on GitHub. There we could also have some kind of discussions going on, and then multiple persons can also join.
I guess also would be more transparent to see also what other people think of requirements and so.
True, and someone can also pick one out and try it.
Also this, I mean, if somebody has some similar solution already somewhere on his table, then this could be also an option.
Anything else from the questions?
Currently, no open question. I guess you can go ahead.
Yeah, if it's not now, maybe it's also file issue. We can start a discussion on that. Maybe that's nevertheless a good thing that we open for these topics, a discussion then on Easy-UI5, and then we can also join to discuss it there. Okay, so I created now an application with Easy-UI5, and I said I want to also talk about another topic, consuming third-party packages or third-party modules. So let's add the UI5 Tooling Modules. So recently, Jakob has renamed the add generator to add extension generator. And when using this generator now, I can add tasks, middlewares, or these tooling extensions, something still to be defined how this finally looks like. It's just the early preview on that, and I showed it also at the UI5Con keynote. I want to add the UI5 Tooling Modules. This is the extension with which you can easily use third-party modules in your UI5 application. And so it asked me some questions for the property. So at the moment, I just use the standard one. And I say I want to add the middleware and the task configuration for me. Yeah, override everything. So with that, it adds now these configurations to the UI5 YAML. And when we look into this project now, this has that's what this add extension does. It adds this dev dependency here. And we have now the configuration being set. So I don't need this extension. This is something I don't need. But for the moment, I only need, let's say, the middleware and the UI5 Tooling Modules task. There is still a bug inside. Need to fix that. And when looking into that, that's now all as a foundation to be able to consume third-party dependencies, because that's what we had in the past already, that everyone was asking how to easily consume third-party dependencies. Then the shimming configuration was necessary. This somehow extended also a little bit the configuration. Then here the shimming needs to be added here. You need to understand at runtime namespaces. But the idea was really to make it as easy as possible and as close as possible to the other frameworks. So at the UI5Con, I used the XSLX extension. So let's add it here as well. And when I want to consume it now at runtime, the only thing what I need to do in my application is I just consume it as I would do it on a node basis. So I would just write then import Stern from XSLX. So it's there already. This one I don't need. And now let's see what's in there. And there is this utils. So let's keep that. And when I say hello, this is a callback handler. I can now access that. And you see, this is the great thing. If you have this as a dependency now with a TypeScript world, it looks like really a module, and you get automatically also the code completion for that. And with that, it's pretty easy at the end to consume that. So if I now log this one into the console, I should be able to have it properly at hand. So let's start it, npm start. Now we start the TypeScript application. And I think that's not really big magic here. Oh, this one I don't need. So I just want to see this one. So if I now press the say hello button, let's make the console here bigger and close this one. Then I have the debug mode turned on. But then what I see here is that this is the function logging of this XSLX module. And now let's make it a little bit bigger. So if I see now how this is being loaded, this is coming now from a path resources XSLX. So for the UI5 runtime during development, it looks like a module coming from the namespaces. And the cool thing is it's being, and that's what I talked about already in the past for the classic behavior of that, it's really, converted into a UI5 like module using the UI5 AMD like syntax. And with that, you can require that with a UI5, simple UI5 require or define call, and then use the module at runtime. So this was one part of the story. And if I now call this SAP UI require, if it's loaded already, I can use, let's say, the direct syntax with a string. And then I get also the reference to that. UI require XLSX, the typo. And then I get the reference to this object. Yeah, if it's not loaded, I need to use the async variant for that, having the array inside and the callback. That's only working if it was once required. But with that, it's now it feels like having a UI5 like module at hand. You get access to these functions, and you can work with that dependency. But now if we look into that, how it's being loaded, XLSX, let's load it. Then we see here that in the headers, this is loaded now from the namespaces resources XLSX. If you would now deploy that into a Fiori Launchpad environment, this would cause a problem because UI5, normally you know that it loads all its modules relative to the bootstrap. And if I now write XLSX, it would be always resolved relative to the UI5 core. And unless I have a path mapping for that, to say it should be loaded from somewhere else. But this dependency is coming from my application. So, but this is really no problem for the development scenario, but it's more interesting if we now build the application. So let's do that later, the update here. Let's do one thing. So now let's build the application. npm run build. So when now build a TypeScript application, the UI5 Tooling Modules task is also being added here. It's processing the XSLX dependency here. And in the dist output, what I see now is that in resources, it puts me this XSLX dependency inside, like you have seen at runtime. So if I would deploy that standalone, all is fine, and it would work properly. But what if I want to deploy it in the Fiori Launchpad? Then I need to have I have a problem because it would not be found as UI5 is loaded from somewhere else, from CDN, and it would look up this dependency from a CDN unless I have a path mapping. So for that, what we have added is a while back already, an option that path mappings can be prepended. So this is now the NPM, the README MD for this module. And there is this prepend path mapping options, which does one thing, and we see that in a second. It will add these path mappings as first entries in the component.js. So before the component is being defined, the path mappings are being set. So what I need to do for that is I go into the UI5 YAML. And here it's there already because I answered this with false. I just answer it now with true. And if I now build clean test, does it already forwarded? Hopefully. Different npm, maybe it's being added already. Build. Yeah, it does the clean test, so then it's clean again. So after the build succeeded, now when we look into that, the XLSX file is still in the resources, but in the component.js, if I pretty print that now, I can also use the debug file and see it a bit better, but still there it's a one-liner because this part is not pretty printed format document. It doesn't format it well. So what we see here from a configuration now, what has been added is it adds this SAP UI loader config part segment in front of that. And here in this path definition, it maps XLSX, this component, to the URL or to that namespace my.org, my app resources XLSX. And with that, it could then find the dependency at runtime. So if I now boot here UI5 from CDN, and I serve it now, and I say hello. So I see also that the dependency works. And when I see it also here in network trace, now it's also again loaded from here. And if this resource mapping would not be present, so maybe we just do a disabling of that, then but I think you would believe me that it doesn't work then. So let's serve. And now application doesn't come up. So there is an error because the rewrite, okay, this error was obvious because I forgot to use from CDN UI5sap.com, and these new short URLs are so nice. Did I do it at the right place? No, I didn't. This. So still the application is not working because it tries to load now XLSX from UI5 subcom, and that happens if this prepend is not working. Okay, normally we should party if it works because I saw cheering. Okay, but let's look now into another option. I said we have a new option, and this was also a bit inspired from this discussion I had with a colleague who said, yeah, well, this configuration is one thing what we have here, but it would be also great if the dependencies could become part of the application's namespace. And when you think about that, why this is also interesting to make the dependencies part of the application's namespace and not consume it via this more general name, is that you have component or application local dependencies finally. And for sure, if you now have two applications being deployed into something like a Fiori Launchpad, with a new functionality now you could have XSLX dependency with version 2 in one application and an XSLX dependency in another application with version 3. And it would work, but it would not work in the way we have seen right now, because here in this scenario, at the runtime, we consume, where's the debug? We consume the dependency always with the same name. So there would be always then a problem, only one wins here in this case, because it's somehow a global module then in this case. And with that, we started to develop this add to namespace extension for that. And this add to namespace extension during the build makes sure that it looks over all the dependencies and all the third-party dependencies, third-party modules, which are detected, loaded via require, define, or with a require to URL command, will be then put into the applications namespace, into a third-party folder, and then all places where it's being required, the name would be rewritten to a local one. And now let's see how this works. So I go into the index and the UI5 YAML, and I add this option, add to namespace true. If you would have both options to true prepend module path and add to namespace, then only the add to namespace will win, because it copies the dependencies into another structure. So when I now run the build, what happens is it again processes the dependencies it detects, and it says also rewriting JS resource. So it rewrites the main controller. So you see also in which files these dependencies are being used, and they are rewritten to the new place. So now the output looks like that. It's in resources, there is no XLSX anymore. Now it's in the namespace of the library in the third party folder. And here you find now this XLSX, similar like it was before. But the difference now is that in the code, at the places where it's being used, like here, it now prepends the namespace of the module, of the component of your application, and adds then the module name. And with that, it's now local to your component. If I now load it again from the dist, I need a script for that to make that faster. npm start. No, not start, serve. So let's serve that here. It again works. That's a good signal already. And if we look into the network now, it's even not loaded. Why could that be? That's not loaded because it's now part of the namespace. And with that, it could be also packaged automatically in the component preload because it's being detected here as well. So you see it here. That's now inside the component preload because it's part of the namespace. This is one thing which happens automatically, independent from that. But the other cool stuff with that is, as it's component local, we can now have for each component, as I said in multiple times, individual versions of the third-party dependencies, and with that, it's unique per your application. Unless there would be some global exposure of anything from this third-party library, but I hope modern third-party libraries don't do that. And so here the same thing. What we can see is also if I hit the say hello button, it also works again. And we can also jump then here in this minified code. Minifying will then also be done by the UI5 tooling. So it's really then fully embedded in the UI5 lifecycle. So I showed basically how it works on that. So it's really easy, no configuration on that. But I want to give you a little bit more details on that, because this tooling modules is developed in this UI5 ecosystem showcase project, and there in the UI5 application, we have a lot of demo code also showing how third-party stuff can be used. And I tested also there different scenarios upfront. because there is more. It's not only about the controller code referring to dependencies like we see here, having XLSX inside, or a Firebase and this special syntax here, and or like accessing super-based stuff. These are some special libraries which are were a little bit complicated to package, but definitely they are also working now with the UI5 tooling modules. But there are also other options. So in this UI5 ecosystem project, we have these custom control libraries, UI5 app module. And these UI5 app modules can be also easily consumed with the UI5 tooling modules by just having a dependency in your project, and they bring own custom controls with that without being inside the library. And this is a custom controller chart, which uses chart.js. And it also includes a style sheet, a local one from itself. And yeah, this is we want to use then also in this application later on to display a chart. And therefore we have in the third-party view XML, which is the place where we test the third-party stuff here, we have added then a namespace to the XML view, which is configuring this custom module. And this is this UI5 module. So you take this name from here, and then you can use this control inside here, simply like a normal control. And now let me show that to you, because time's running and I thought I have plenty of time today, and now we are already close to the end. There is an option, show third party, and now here, hooray, the chart is running. It's now really using this custom control from this external library. And here we see then also this chart. Let me just briefly prove that. $$0, control 0. So this is, and now we set get metadata to find out what it is. So it should now tell me I'm a UI5 app module chart. So there's no trick. This is really the way how it can work. And with that example, I want to give you a little bit more explanation, because there you need to know also some specialities. So while it's working like that for custom modules, you need to be careful, because I added a warning here, which explains it can work for any third-party module, but for UI5 modules, you have to know some specialities, because UI5 modules, if you define them, we have seen that in the chart, they use the object extend syntax and give the UI5 module name. The module name is following this dot syntax, and the module path is using the slash syntax. Normally, UI5 assumes that these two paths are identical, but in the case when we build it and run it, then this path, if it's being put into the third-party namespace, it can be different. And this is what happens here. If I build that, so I did it up front already, and in the third party, I see, look, here all the things are being copied inside UI5 app. This is the Firebase part, the Supabase, the chart.js is also detected, and the UI5 app module, including the CSS, is also being copied here, because the CSS was loaded with the required to URL syntax. And here in the chart.js, you see chart.js in the chart control, you see the name for chart.js is being rewritten, but all the internal names, the UI5 module names, they still stay with the dots. And on the place where it's being consumed, like the view, for example, here a rewrite takes place. It's a bit hard to read. Maybe we can format that. Yeah. Here we see we have this namespace, and here the namespace is getting prefixed because it's now copied into the namespace. And here the chart is using then this module, but it would now, from an outside perspective, how the module is being loaded, have the this new path. And there could be some things which now don't work anymore, and you should be aware of. It's something, if you do an is-f check with the sub-UI-based object API, there could be a problem if the module is having a different name and you assume that the sub-UI, your component local name is being used. Or you should inline renderers typically or reference them as a module when developing a new UI5 module. And all the places where you are calculating or deriving the module names from the past or vice versa. These are places where this could have a conflict. I think that would be rare when you use that, and maybe also custom controls is not the main scenario for which this is now made. But definitely, if you are using something like third-party modules, try out this add to namespace, play around with that, and it helps you then to have finally an application which you can deploy with third-party into a Fiori Launchpad context, and you get component local dependencies with that. So I talked long, I'm in point, but there maybe are questions.
You are in point, exactly. It's 4 o'clock. But I think from the reactions, people are quite impressed. I have to confess, I'm also quite impressed. Have seen this demo now the first time. Well done.
It spontaneously happened.
Yeah, well done. I guess this is what you mentioned at UI5Con at one question.
Yeah, I think Marcel asked that, right?
Exactly. So finally, you and this.
Finally, it's public. We released it just before UI5ers Live. UI5 Tooling Modules 070, you see it published 1 hour ago, is available. You can make use of that already. And for sure, if you detect issues, go to the ecosystem project, raise an issue, and we can follow up on that.
Yeah, so also congrats to this colleague, really well done. And thanks for this contribution to the community. And yeah, as I don't see any questions, and as we are over time, and I know that you have a meeting right now, I guess we have to stop here. Just to mention, next month, there's no UI5ers Live because Peter needs some sun and has to go on vacation, and the same occurs to me and to the others. So I hope that's fine that we have a summer break, but we will be back in October. And then hopefully again with some topics from the community. For sure, one topic we have already reserved for some colleagues. So be curious and
play around with the stuff, have new ideas, come up with new ideas, and enjoy summer vacation.
Yeah, so with this, have a good evening and see you in October, hopefully. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.